AI is everywhere these days, and while some people may pass it off as a buzzword, it's a powerful tool that can actually make you much more effective. That effectiveness can be applied to many different areas in your life, and while we're not going to talk about most of those, we are going to talk about customizing and developing in Odoo. And while tools like ChatGPT and Grok are pretty cool and have their use cases for Odoo, there's a different AI tool that I want to talk about today. And honestly, it's super exciting, so you'll want to stay tuned. I wonder how many of you already know about this, because it's been out for, I think, a couple weeks now. Either way, this is pretty awesome, right? Odoo is actually investing in their own AI to answer your questions. So let's play with this a little bit. So let's start this out slow. We're going to say, how can I add a new field? Fairly general question. We're not being too terribly specific, so let's see how it does. So we got fairly broad strokes for community. I don't know if that's intentional or not, just because they want to push you towards enterprise, but it looks like enterprise is a bit more helpful, giving us Odoo Online and then Odoo SH because you're going to have different options there. That makes sense. Then we've got how to do it in Studio, which is pretty helpful. And then, yeah, a little bit more on community, so that's appreciated. Pretty decent answer here. Now you may be thinking, that wasn't extremely helpful for me. You know, if I'm a beginner, this is going to be a lot more difficult. The key here, as with most AI tools, is to keep asking questions. Don't be afraid to look stupid. They're not going to judge you. Well, at least as far as I know. So I went ahead and asked this question. Can you give me some documentation or videos to help with this? Just because there are other guides, maybe I want to reference those. And it gave me a whole slew of things here, along with a bunch of sources that then I can reference later. And now, just because I know it worked before, and now that I've warmed it up, maybe it'll work, I'm going to ask it to tell me a joke. Because it did yesterday. Hopefully it doesn't turn me down this time. Oh yeah, it worked. Why did the Odoo user break up with the Python developer? Because they couldn't see eye to eye. One was all about the user interface and the other was lost in the... Is that really a joke? Maybe more of a dad joke. Ah, that is true. And a bit more funny, I think. Okay, enough of the silly stuff, but I did ask it how I could get Fabian to adopt me the other day, and I had some helpful suggestions there. So go ahead and try that out too if you want. Okay, time for something a bit more functional. How can I get a sales order to automatically create an attached purchase order? So we already know the answer to this, but let's see if the Odoo AI bot does. And this is a pretty solid answer. It says using the drop shipping or make to order route is the way to go, which is exactly what I would have told you guys. So that's good to see. Functionally, it's pretty good so far. Let's go a bit deeper. How can I see the inventory of a kit product when I'm creating a sales order? I'm going to say the available inventory. So I don't totally agree with the answer here. It's basically suggesting that we create our own way of doing this. Normally speaking, there is a way that you can see the inventory for a kit, at least in certain versions of Odoo, but it doesn't mention that here. So that's a bit sad. But again, we want to keep asking questions, so I'm going to say, I thought there was a way to see it in forecast. To see it in the forecast for the product. Okay, so now I got more the answer that I was expecting. So again, the important thing here, as with any AI tool, is to keep asking questions if you don't quite get the answer you're looking for. Okay, so up to this point, we have focused on the functional side. Let's start looking at the technical side. So say I'm dinking around, making a server action, and I go to run that server action, and I get an error. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just copy this guy and say, I got this error when running a server action. Can you help me? And then paste the error. And the frustrating thing that you're going to find here is that we're limited as far as what we can drop into this chat. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to notice is that it cut off what I pasted. We've got a character limit here. That's not super helpful. So let's try this instead. I'm going to grab my test function and I'm going to say, do you see any problems with this code? And let's see what it says. And by the way, this prompt did give me the correct answer for how to fix things, but if the error had other pieces that I needed that were further down, It probably wouldn't have. So I pasted in the code because it's shorter. It actually fits in here. And it says, yes, I see a significant problem with that code. Name error, name line underscore ID is not defined, which is really what the error was before. And it says the code is trying to use a variable named LNE underscore ID inside the raise user error function, but LNE underscore ID has not been defined or assigned a value anywhere in the code. So actually giving it the code was pretty dang helpful. I've actually used it to help me with a lot of code recently, both with making code work more efficiently and also helping me with some of the finer details. Sadly though, that character limit does make it harder for us to use this for fixing errors. And yes, I know that this is a free tool and that Grok and ChatGPT also have character limits on their free versions, but I'm just pointing it out. So I could spend hours playing with this and showing you around, but really, it's going to come down to how you use this, whether it's helpful or not. So I have a few tips for using this tool effectively. And yes, these tips do apply to other AI tools as well. The first is probably the most important, and that's to keep asking questions. Going along with that, try and be as clear as possible with the questions you're asking. If the AI, specifically this tool, gets confused, remind it what version of Odoo you're in and what kind of hosting type you have. Lastly, and this may seem obvious, but don't give up. There are so many times where I could have thrown in the towel with a tool like this or with Odoo development in general, but I was that close to the finish line and I just needed to keep pushing. Okay, all that being said, how would I rate this tool? I honestly think it's a really great starting point. It can answer most of the questions that I've thrown at it. Most of it is just getting it to understand what you're asking, which is an issue you're going to have with any AI tool or even Reddit. And it's free. How cool is that? Top that off with the fact that I haven't found a limit yet as far as how many questions you can ask in sequence. Generally, ChatGPT or Grok or any of the other AI tools on their free plans will limit how many questions you can ask in a period of time. So all in all, a pretty cool tool. But what are the drawbacks? Well, it doesn't retain conversations, so if I want to come back and reference something later, I'm out of luck. That and the character limit are the main drawbacks here. So I'm really kind of hoping that Odoo at some point will make a premium version of this for its enterprise customers. But honestly, if nothing else, you should try this out, guys. So go to odoo.com/help and give it a whirl. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. If you want to, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. And certainly, if you have any questions, drop that in the comments below or grab time on my Calendly if you need a little bit more time. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you soon.